talked a minute ago hit on the concept of efficiencies and best use of human capital and time. A huge part of our cost structure goes into being prepared to be reactive, having a truck ready to go when somebody calls in, okay, having 2 or 3 or 4 of these things lined up, sitting there ready to go. Hopefully that phone rings, right? And we could squeeze out so much efficiency, so much better margin out of this. If I knew a week ahead of time you needed that, where you needed it, when you're gonna, what you need. Now I can plan. Do I need 2 truck drivers today? Ends up I don't. They were here anyway, just in case somebody called, but I don't. So if I know ahead of time, my efficiencies are so much better. And if I know that you need that next week, and I got my truck's open 2 days ahead of time, and nothing's booked in that machine. Can I go ahead and get it out to you? Because now I get to control that level of efficiency. So I understand that we would get pushback, but there's guardrails you can put on this. Okay, you teach people direct sales and how to build these relationships. There's absolutely no reason you cannot have certain of your customers who you have a committed rate to. And you know what I tell you more? Hey, these are our ceiling prices. You want to know a secret, Mr. Customer? Go look a couple weeks early. You'll probably find a little bit of a better price on it. We're never going to charge you more. These are our agreed upon numbers. But give you a little hint. You start looking 3 or 4 weeks ahead of time, you got some better rates on there.
You're so right. Nobody's ever said it to me that way. But in every other industry, they've gotten over it, even for the largest companies. Now, I know that, and I forget the statistic, Apple buys hundreds of seats every day between San Francisco and Shanghai, and they probably have a negotiated rate, right? But most companies out there aren't Apple. And it does drive a lot of efficiencies. And I'm not arguing necessarily, because this is the way we get taken out of context, is that it's all a profit-driven, revenue-driven decision by the rental company. There would be benefits to contractors. If they planned better, if they booked in advance, the smarter contractors, the more planful contractors could get better rates. They could save money. Because I'm not saying that we only increase rates when it's busy. I'm saying we decrease
100%.
rates when it's slow to encourage more of those rentals.
And the contractors are already doing this. We just haven't jumped on board. I went over to a major, if you look at the ENR, so the Equipment News Report, and they sat there and they put out all the top ones. This is a 1 or a 2 level electrical contractor in North America. And they literally go and buy containers of conduit and wire. They buy entire spools of wire. And I'm like, what job is that for? And he goes, it's not. We get a price because we bought it ahead of time, and we bought the conduit ahead of time. We know we're going to land that job. Our planning makes us better margins. The problem is we haven't coached that same thing. We're used to being, as Jeff so eloquently put it, super reactionary, and we're willing to eat the margins to be Johnny on the spot, let me jump and make it happen. And we're willing to react like that, and we'll eat the money for their inefficiencies. But they know how to plan. They're just not doing it with us.
We're rewarding bad behavior.
Yeah.
Okay, because we're ready to help
There's
fix
no
your
negatives.
problem.
There's no negatives, yeah.
Well, it's an interesting thought process to get down into rate harvesting and dynamic pricing and what's really how much margin's being left there. Because, flip it the other way. What if the major airlines typical order point was 24 hours ahead of time? They couldn't do what they do. They couldn't run the networks that they run.
That's
okay?
right.
They have to encourage that. But by doing that, that allowed them to plan and get efficiencies and get scale. And that's why you can buy a round trip ticket for a few $100 to fly somewhere around the country, right? How's that even possible? Because they know what their demand looks like ahead of time.
Yeah.
Okay. We're not exactly the same as an airline, and it's a mistake. That's a good one. And the rental car might be a little bit better example. You can't stay in that seat on that airline longer than you want to. You can't decide, you know what, I know I rented this for a day.
Yes. We both connected.
I'm just going to sit in the seat for a couple more days because I like it. No, you
Yeah.
can't do that. They know exactly that. That's
You're buying that one flight.
their
You can't
SKU
do it.
is
You know
that
what?
seat, and they know when it's available.
Yeah, now that we're sitting in New York, you know what? I think I'm just going to stay on the flight
Yeah.
to all the way to France.
I'm not done with this movie, so I'm
But
just
cars-
watching it. You know?
But to your point, though, that is a really good point. Hotels and cars are like that. They're something
are.
you're
That's a
utilizing that
closer-
is taken away from you
Right.
if you don't plan properly. Now I know a lot of rental companies, now that you say that, because I'm thinking it myself, like I kind of want them to keep it longer. Like I know at certain times of the year, I'm not calling and reminding them that, hey, maybe you should send that back to me because you're at a month. I'm just, hey, everything going okay? I'll just go ahead and extend you out on that. So you're right there. But so how do we change it?
Well, but it's also tricky too, because if I book a flight a month in advance and I get a good price on my seat, and then for whatever reason, 2 days beforehand, I've got to switch it to the next day.
Yep.
Okay. I've already been trained. You're going to wipe that ticket out and you're going to pay the current rate for the next day, right?
Yeah.
Now
Or you're going to pay change fees or whatever is included.
Now
Yep.
you're a contractor and you've encouraged that contractor to order ahead, because if you'll order ahead, I'll give you a better rate on this machine. But then suddenly that day comes up and his project's 2 days delayed because of the weather. Are you holding that rate for him?
Yeah.
You have to.
Oh, every time.
Don't you?
Well, you don't have to.
You don't have to.
Just the same way the airline doesn't, the hotel and the car rental doesn't.
But-
So are you then saying that it's a great idea, but it's not implementable, or do you have some ways that we could implement it or get around some of those?
So, I for sure, when you fly to visit a client, okay, that's you're using the airlines as part of your business.
Amen.
But how do I put this? You may or may not be building the cost of that airline seat necessarily in your overall model. Maybe if you pick up a consulting gig and you say, okay, I'll be here every month, and so I'll have some travel and expense costs in there, right? The contractor has bid the job, especially like our guys, our customers are doing smaller jobs. So if the rental component goes up by 20% on them because they switched it to 2 days later,
Yep.
that could wipe out their profit, right? So we have to be very careful. We encourage ordering ahead, but at the same time, if they need to make edits, we have to be able to accommodate that for them, even if their edit pushes it into a rate period that should be higher.
Yeah. But isn't that still part of their job? I mean, as you're giving me the example that you gave earlier that resonated so much, I'm thinking about, myself when I travel. I have a budget for when and how I travel. And if I make poor travel decisions, it costs more money, and then maybe I can't go places or do certain things. Rental isn't such a big part of a contractor's budget that some of that can't be accounted for. Like sometimes bad things are going to happen and it's going to be more expensive. Other times good things are going to happen, though it's going to be cheaper.
Right.
So will it balance out enough? Like you don't hear I guess you hear business travelers say, I'm going to Zoom instead of fly now in some cases.
But that's not possible if you have to dig a hole.
But that's not possible if you have to dig a hole.
That's right.
But on the same token, is that there's going to be negatives. Is the net result better for the contractor in that realm, or is the net result better for the contractor when they pay more, but they can get it last minute and we're flexible and we do all of those things? There's a little gray area in between, but living in the gray area isn't going to work for us. Like, can we move towards the other?
So all industries move towards better and better margins over time. Okay, everyone's always looking for more efficiency. So we can talk about this as a hypothetical. We are going there at some point in time.
Yeah.
Okay, we got all the other margins squeezed out everywhere else. I got all my operations are as tight as they get. Where's the next dollar coming from? Oh, okay, it's going to be on dynamic pricing. But here's the thing: it gives an opportunity to build a personality for your company. Okay, so now maybe we're in the future. All rental rates have some level of flex to them, depending on if you're willing to do it on a weekday instead of a weekend, ordering ahead, right? But maybe my rental company, our policies are a little more. We don't charge you for the first bag, right? Okay, and so, or maybe we can craft policies, procedures, our algorithm in a way that's slightly different than somebody else's. Maybe it's more lenient. Maybe it's super tight. I got the best rates in the world, and if you change one day, you're going back to zero, right? But another rental company can say, you know what, we've got 3-day grace periods on these. You can move it here and there. So there's ways, I think there's very interesting ways that you can see that pricing model end up creating personalities and different types of rental companies that serve different people. But you can choose.
I like that comparison, and I try and think of oftentimes where other industries have solved similar problems. And because I think about how we get to that next step, and part of it I think is that it would take somebody large enough to create an identity around that is successful. And one of the examples that I would give for that would be a company called EasyJet in Europe. They're not here in the U.S. They're a low-cost provider of flights throughout Europe, but they were the first company in Europe that said, you have to do it all online. Don't call us. You're not going to get a hold of us, but it is a lot.
Expedia does that.
Yeah, a lot. It's a lot more efficient for us as EasyJet with all of the different languages here and all of the complexities. We're going to give you the cheapest rate, but you are going to do everything online. And they were known for that cost cutting. At one point, I think they were trying to charge for using lavatory on a plane. You definitely were charged for the bags and stuff like that. And they built their brand and their model on, we're going to be easy and we're going to be cheap, but we're going to be completely digitized and you're going to pay for every single thing. But they were big. So they were big enough to be well, do you want like the Virgin Air experience or British Airway experience, or do you want to be able to hop over Munich real cheap? Right. Maybe we need somebody larger to kind of drive that flag in the ground and say, you can go to that company that's super flexible. Or you can pay the cheap rate here. And plan better. Which kind of business do you want to do? Or do you want to mix your business between the two?
You're a lot more familiar with these larger organizations than I am. So I'm curious what you think, because to me, I feel like the largest of the rental companies have so much structure around how they operate that would be so disrupting to the way that they're organized to operate. It might take a more nimble company. Maybe it's a regional, maybe it's but I just feel like you'd almost have to be a much more nimble company to actually get that moving.
I completely agree with you. I think you need to be nimble enough that you can allow it to coach and lead people on a local level, and then allow it to expand and do proof of concept where you can show that it's working. I think that at the same time, though, it's going to take somebody where it's going to take one of the big boys to do it, and then everybody's going to say,
you're going to have to run.
It has to be this way. Like I'm actually sitting right now, and I'm formulating, and thank you for all the great thoughts. I'm trying to think about right now, are all the mergers, are all the acquisitions, not just to buy market share, but guess what? If I'm one of the big five, I can't do dynamic pricing if you're going to stick to my 19-foot scissors are $500. I won't say day, week, or month because we won't do any of that. But if you say mine are $500, and one of the big guys is saying, look, right now we're at 87% time utilization on our 19-foot scissors, and in the Atlanta market, we need to drive that price up, and you're sticking with $500. So they realize they need to gobble up some of these rental companies so that they can create dynamic pricing, because there's too many variables right now where if I tell somebody, hey, my dynamic pricing is if you book it on a Friday afternoon, this is the price. And you're saying it's $500. It's $500. It's been $500 for 3 years. And that's just the way it is.
You know who could do it? And I hate to single people out publicly, but you know who could do it and change the industry for that? Lowe's and Home Depot.
Oh, absolutely. And we're sitting in their backyard here.
I know, in Atlanta. If one of the two of them or both of them were like, this model works everywhere else, most of our customers are small contractors and DIY. We have locations all across the country. We're just going to do this. It'd make it really easy for everybody else to follow suit.
And the thing that, and not to interrupt, I saw you chiming in there, Jeff. I was scanning over your numbers, and the thing that shocked me is that group of numbers that you gave that kind of did things. The one thing that got me is your national home improvement stores was the single segment that saw the largest growth in rental dollars.
Yeah.
And they're not even getting into the game. They're just doing it for convenience and basically battling with the local guys and stealing their market. But if they wanted to come after the national guys, I think you're exactly right. They're the ones who could say, we want to do dynamic pricing and we're going to implement it. And we've got the footprint and the power, and we'll see how it rolls.
And our customer base is the right customer base for that.
Yeah.
I understand your argument that, if I'm running a dynamic pricing and this competitor is running a fixed pricing, the second my dynamic pricing gets above his fixed pricing, I'm going to lose that order. But what are you trying to maximize for? I mean, if I'm running a dynamic pricing program here, it's because I'm trying to get to a certain utilization number. Is that time? Is that dollar? I don't really care what that guy over here is doing. I'm just going to continue to move it until I'm in the sweet spot.
Well, and beyond that, though, those are already solved in the other industries that we talked about. Like, I live in Atlanta. I can fly direct almost anywhere in the country via Delta. Right. I fly Delta.
Right. I don't even look at the others because it's all right there.
Right. I have status with Delta. Yeah. They have me locked in. It would take a big difference in price for me to move because I know my overall value is really good with Delta. They have found ways to lock me in. So we would just need to figure out what that kind of lock-in feel is.
They've already figured it out. Why does having status with Delta help?
I get better seating. I get perks. It's lots of stuff.
You jumping up higher on the delivery line
free bags.
There's no reason that we can't just basically duplicate their model. Okay. Yeah. So now now we're training the customers to go and understand prices are different. They change. But the more you use me, even though sometimes I make you a little bit mad, you're going to have a little bit more status. And so now, you know what? Your delivery cost just went down by 15% because that's a part of you being platinum.
I think it was American Express that said, membership has its benefits.
Right.
Well, and what is...
And you're going to pay $400 a year for that card, but
membership has its benefits.
And, with, I don't know the other programs as much, but like with Delta, at this point with my status, I get same-day change fees. Or waived. So maybe there's even that place where if you're loyal enough and a big enough customer, like that's just built into the model. If you need to move your thing by 24 or 48 hours, then that's a perk you get because you stick with us. At Marriott, I am not this level of status, but if you become an ambassador level, you get to choose your 24. Elliot's raising his hand over there. You get to choose your 24, which means that you can check in. Let's say you want to check in at noon one day, you check out at noon the next day. Like you pick your 24 hours, cool. And they guarantee a room for you. There's a lot of things they do around that if you're that big or popular a customer and you're that loyal to them. So as we're talking through this, I think there's a lot of ways to hook people in. It's a better experience. It's more profitable. It's more valuable. Better margins for everybody. I don't know. But I think...
I mean, you've just described a certain flavor of a company. So that company has, that's part of who Marriott is that they have this program and you could be a part of that. And so again, yes, they're going to harvest their room rates to get the maximum dollar out of it, but they have a characteristic where, hey, but if you keep with us, we have lots of ways to help you kind of navigate through that.
Yeah, they've mastered the 20-80 principle. We were talking about it at breakfast that, the 20-80 principle, the Pareto principle is basically that 80% of your business comes from 20% of your customers. Mm-hmm. And if they're that deadly loyal to you, you build a program to cater to them. But there's still a massive chunk of business out there. And because of the margins we operate on, we got to look at every single opportunity to gain business because right now, our 20-80 is being dipped into by some of those bigger national guys because they realize they've maxed out and they're controlling a lot of these mega projects with on-site yards. They're controlling a lot of that and they're saying, okay, well, we still need to grow because we're answering to shareholders. And they're saying, let's dip into the local guys market and let's take their top 20% of their customers and see if we can gain some of that market. And it's getting tough.
Yeah. Yep.
So that makes me think about rewards programs. I have seen so many rental companies try rewards programs.
And they never have really stuck.
And they've all been unsuccessful. I think you've tried some. I know for me that the best rewards programs tend to be that you get a guaranteed 10% discount or a special delivery rate or something like that. Now, maybe it's because we haven't been able to build enough value in there because we don't have that range of pricing or range of margins. But I think a rewards program might be part of making something like this stick. I mean, why haven't rewards programs worked for you?
I guess maybe to your point, they're not that exciting. I mean, for you at Delta, the ability to switch, that's a really valuable reward.
Yeah.
Okay. If I'm going to give somebody 10% off delivery and that's their fixed reward, well, honestly, if they just said, hey, can you do 10% on the delivery? I'd probably have done it for them anyway. You know
okay.
What I mean? Yeah, so it's a good question. And we haven't dug deep into it, okay? But I know a lot of the big companies have, and I don't think it's driven a lot of value to
so I have to wonder, when I think about rewards programs with Marriott and Delta, who does it impact? Who does the rewards program really reward? Is it the company or is it me? Because one of the things I think about in that case is when we're talking about a lot of rewards programs in the rental industry, and I'm just talking straight off my mind here, we're talking about, oh, well, you can get a discount for your company. You can get better delivery rates for your company. But when I'm talking about Marriott or Delta, I get a room upgrade. I get points that I use for personal vacations. I get a more comfortable seat on the flight. That makes my life better, which probably drives my behavior even more than if my company got a 5 or 10% discount.
It's cheaper for them to make you happy than to go try to directly sell to ARA, right? Should just, you'll book your flight. Mm-hmm. And you're going to always choose Delta, and they kind of hooked your organization by hooking you. Yeah, that's actually a very important point.
Yep.
All right, so dynamic rates, rewards programs. The other thing that's kind of related to those that we hear a lot about is subscription models. Do subscription models have a place in rental where you pay a fixed rate somehow, and you get access to something because you're paying that fixed rate?
Teach me. So you're saying, like, hypothetically, if I said, I know based on my rental dollars, and I'm just going to do an arbitrary number of $2,000. I know my company spends a minimum of $5,000 every single month in rental revenue, but I'm going to buy a subscription, and I'm going to tell you I'm going to automatically withdraw $2,000 out of my bank account, and on that $2,000, you give me a 20% discount or 20% bonus. So now that's worth either $2,400 or I pay $1,600 for that $2,000. I mean, tell me, what do you mean by a subscription?
It could be that, but I think, it definitely could be that. We can discuss that. But the model that I've seen be more common that I think that when people say that they're talking about is, let's go back in time a little bit, Netflix versus Blockbuster.
Yeah.
You go to Blockbuster, you rent a video, you return it to Blockbuster, you pay a price. When Netflix first came out, you paid a price and you got 2 DVDs at a time.
Yeah.
You sent them back, you got 2 more DVDs. You paid a monthly rate and you always got 2 DVDs at a time. With Blockbuster, you didn't have a monthly rate. You would just rent as needed when needed. The movie theaters are even now starting to try and do that, where you pay a monthly fee and you can see as many movies as you want. Versus paying for individual tickets. Now, we haven't seen airlines or hotels or anybody like that say, well, if you give me $5,000 then you get X rooms or X flights for free or something like that. But we have seen rental companies or other things with asset type businesses where they say, if you pay me $500 a month, and one of our large rental companies has tried this, if you pay us $500 a month, then, and that's just an arbitrary number, $500 a month, then you get access to any of this type of equipment that you want, and you can have 2 out at a time. So let's say it's jumping jack tamps, breakers, core drills, that kind of.
But not like big equipment. But
you could do it, but it'd be more expensive. But we'll just take some of those small tools that you always have 1 or 2 out, cut-off saws, and say you can have 2 out at a time. So today I've got a cut-off saw and a breaker out because I'm working on a concrete job. Tomorrow I return those, still the same monthly rate. Tomorrow I return those and I get a core drill and a rotary hammer. And tomorrow, the day after that, I return those and get a jumping jack tamp and a plate tamp or whatever that might be. Same rate all month. Doesn't matter if I would keep it for a day or if I keep it the whole month. And that kind of incentivizes me to always spend that money with you. And it doesn't penalize me when I need a jackhammer for a day here and then a jackhammer for another day later in the month, and then I need to swap it out for a cutoff saw. I don't pay all these little nickel and dimed, which really add up, expensive rates, for all these daily rates. I give you a guaranteed monthly amount, and I get to have 2 items out at a time.
My brother and I have tried to model that for probably 15 years. And we've gone back to it, and I can't figure out how to get around some of the problems. Our usage on machines, the difference in value of renting a small tool versus a larger piece of equipment, just the ability to keep track of that and understand what is your real return now. I mean, if I'm charging you $500, pick a number, and you can come get X number of pieces of machinery throughout the year of a certain category. How do I know which of these items I'm really making money on now? You know what I mean? I don't have a direct connection of what dollar went to what you could theoretically.
Yeah, and I can see why it wouldn't work. And I realize your Blockbuster model and Netflix model is brilliant, by the way. The problem is that those DVDs that we went down and picked up at Netflix or picked up at Blockbuster, every single one of them cost the exact same to make.
And they're the same size and same
And
shape.
the crazy thing is, I remember going into and dating myself going into Blockbuster, and when you would grab the DVD, if it was a new release, they were $7.99. And if you went over to the old vintage movie, these were all their $99 or 99-cent rentals.
Mm-hmm.
And so they even did some of that dynamic, kind of force your habits. But the problem is to them, it all costs the same. Where if you sit there, even though they're both small tools, the amount you pay for a steel chainsaw or a demo saw or a cutoff saw or a core drill,
I was just about to say
those go 3 to 4 times the cost.
Totally.
And somebody sits there and says, you know what, Jeff? I'm going to go ahead and do this subscription, and we're going to keep a core drill out for a month. And you sit there and you say, well, I get it. It's $500 that I'm making for their subscription, but I was hoping they would have rented a drill, a normal drill, or a cheap demo saw that cost me $1,000, and then I'm making $500 a month for them, and I'm getting a high ROI on my investment. And the problem is there's people that tap into that, and that's
they're going to sit on it. I mean, what you're hoping to get out of it is they're in and out of your store with some frequency. They're kind of swapping it, and then when they need the bigger thing, you're already the guy there, so that's off.
Yeah, they're buying filters,
right?
They're buying fuel.
But when you start to model it out, and somebody says, "Well, why would I return this now? I don't have to return it." Okay.
Yeah.
And now your item is sitting there; it's not making you any more money, and so. The more I've tried to model, I tell you what we did do for a while, and I didn't. It took off a little bit, but I think if we had explained it better and let people know more, we have a day, week, month system in this industry.
Yeah.
Okay, hey, you got to you're 3 days in, you can keep it for the week. You're 2, 3 weeks or whatever. If you have an item out on a monthly rental, but you return it a day early, you should get something back off that monthly rental. Okay, 2 days early, you should get something, even if it's $50, right? There should be some incentivization. This thing, and you hear your rental coordinators. Oh, you've already had it 3 days. Just keep it for the week. I'm like, no. If they're done with it, get it back.
Absolutely.
Okay.
You want to encourage them to be efficient with that asset because you can go turn around and rent it to somebody else for more money.
Yeah.
Like there's the sharing aspect of that.
And you don't want to train your customer to say, oh, well, you know what? It doesn't cost me anymore to keep it a couple more days. It should always cost something more.
I've never even thought about that. I hear so many people on rental counters where they're like, well, 3 days just equals a month, so just keep it for the entire, or 3 days equals a week, so just keep it for the entire week. And literally people will just let it sit in case they need it. And you're like, as a company, we
should be incentivizing
it's
the
so
return.
much waste. It's waste for the contractor. It's waste for us. If I can give you $100 to give it to me now, and then I can, for that same period of time, rent it for $200, the contractor saved money and I've made money. Like that is a huge win-win.
Even if it's a marginal amount of money, it should always save the customer money to return it earlier.
And I'll tell you, playing off of your subscription, and I'm just spitballing here.
Yep.
Yeah.
But playing off of your subscription thing is you sit there and you say, if you return it earlier, any unit, any asset, if you return it earlier, we give you a discount. You have to figure out what that arbitrary number is, a percentage or something. And what we'll do is we will apply it to your account for future rentals.
Yep.
So now you're building loyalty
You're
where
locked
somebody
into it.
sits there and they're like, look, if we need it for 4 days, we rent it for 4 days. We could keep it for the full week, but if we bring it back, we paid for a full week, they will give us credit towards future rental. Now you're doing what you said, which is building the loyalty. Mm-hmm. You're also building a subscription base. And then the other thing is you're rewarding the habits of, if you don't need it, don't let it be
100%.
a lawn ornament
100%.
Sitting out at your house just because you're like, I paid for a week.
Another theft risk. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the guy puts it out in the North 40 and somebody's like, hey, it hasn't moved in
It's
a week.
sitting here for 3 days. Like,
Yeah. And I think that does go back and speak a little bit to the subscription model. People are just going to let it sit.
That's the problem.
And
when
it's just,
you model out the person that just sits on it,
yeah,
it becomes extremely unprofitable.
yeah, you're cutting your own revenues
Yeah.
in a way that doesn't benefit you, and it doesn't really bring a whole lot of value to the customer. I want to be able to play devil's advocate here and push for it, but I have not seen an adequate solution. Now, if somebody has a good solution for that, I would love to discuss it in a forum like this, but I have not seen.
Have you seen anybody, and I haven't, I'm asking this question, have you seen any companies try to sell hours? So,
Yes.
Absolutely.
Where they say, hey, we're going to sell you a package of hours
Oh.
use on a machine, so 500-hour package. And you can kind of apply that to different machines or how you want to, or certain groups of machinery.
Yeah, I haven't seen that. So when I said yes initially, what I've seen is where a rental company will put equipment out on a job site and then give everybody a code on the job site and then charge people based on the
Yeah,
hours they use
that's
it and
neat
split
too.
it between
That's
multiple
very cool.
contractors. That I think is really slick.
really neat.
I've not seen anybody say, well, you can buy a package of hours up front at a discounted rate.
That may be closest you're going to get to a subscription.
Yeah, I could see
model,
that. I could
right?
see that. Yeah.
Selling you 100 hours a month. You know, we're getting transportation. You know, depends, you use 100 hours
Yeah.
how you want to. If it means 4 different machines,
Well,
there's transportation involved.
That's almost a more elegant version of what you started to propose earlier, which is if you guarantee me $2,000 a month, I'll give you $2,400 in value. So you buy $1,000 in machine hours up front every month, and you'll get the equivalent of $1,200. I think there's a space where that regular guaranteed locked in subscription model could bring value. I just don't know where it fits.
Yeah, it's tricky.
It's interesting. I think it's a phenomenal conversation because I think we're dabbling in. I mean, the industry's changing so fast; it's growing so quickly. I think it's fun conversation because we realize how is this game going to be played, and how are we going to compete 5 and 10 years from now? The game is not the same when I started. It's not the game when any of us started.
The industry's gotten so big. How do I put this? It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that things continue the way that they are. You know what I'm saying? Because there's so much momentum in how the business works. So we're talking about some very neat ideas here that you don't ever see, or maybe why?
Well, I don't know if
so
you
much
just saw,
momentum
but
building.
the ARA just redid their projections
I saw that.
for the year that the numbers are going up, and you got to believe. I mean, it's money. Money drives the world. And you sit there, and anytime you're outperforming in, quote, a downed year, they're all kinds of things, just economic rebound or an election year or whatever, they're claiming this is a little bit of a slower year, and the rental industry is outperforming projections. That attracts a lot of attention on Wall Street. And as that attracts attention, we're going to have people that are going to say, you know what, there's money to be made here, there's investments that need to be made here. We're gaining attention because we're outpacing other industries. Where it used to be like, I mean, you sit back and you look at it, when the .com, and we were talking about the .com, when that was booming, everybody threw all their money into it. And now we're becoming more attractive because we're actually outpacing our projections. You better believe that's going to draw attention, and people are going to start saying we need to invest in this industry. I think that's why some of the acquisitions have happened, is because people are realizing, hey, there's money to be made here if you manage it and run it right, like you've done.
So I think the thing that relates to that has been a conversation now in rental for, I'd say, at least a decade is the re-rental companies or the remarketing companies, and them all coming in trying to revolutionize the industry by doing it all digitally or not owning assets. Some of them started with even sharing equipment between contractors, which is never proven to be very effective.
I didn't break it.
Yeah, that sounds like a horrible
I mean,
idea.
they can't plan ahead with our stuff, and we maintain it for them. I don't understand how they share their own stuff. Like, that's just, it's going to be a while before something like that works. Is there a place for a fully digital, resharing company or a sharing model in that way? Not the contractor type, but like the other models that we have seen come up where they play a different game and they utilize everybody else's assets.
So I'm going to chime in on this one only because I've had the luxury of having great conversations like this one with a lot of different people. And I had a couple of big tech companies where I flew into San Francisco to the Silicon Valley and sat down and talked with them. And they were like, look, let's just turn the rental industry into an Amazon. You go on, you order it, you get it taken care of, it gets delivered, and the truth is nobody cares about the color of your equipment.
It's true.
So if they don't care about the color, people want convenience, and we see, as you so eloquently put it, the 20-somethings want that convenience where they can order it on their phone. We're going to make it that you click, we tap into everybody's fleet. We're never out of fleet. You can put your fleet on there, and you can get the deal, and so can one of the big five. And so you're getting business. It's a low cost to you because you don't need to advertise. They're handling all of it, just like Amazon. You're just warehousing it. And I was like, this is a great concept. This is a great concept. I'm like, we thought that too. It's going to make millions. And I said, who handles the service?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, watch this, is that if I book a piece of equipment, and we're going to say, which is crazy hard to get right now and super highly utilized, a telehandler, a variable reach forklift, whatever name you want to use it for. A driver delivers it, it's backing off the truck, and all of a sudden it blows something, major hydraulic line. The customer's yelling and screaming. Do they call the company that was delivered it, whatever name's on the side of the truck? And we'll say it's your rental company, Jeff. Do they call the name on the truck? No, what's going to happen is you're going to say, you didn't book it through me. Just like when I book a hotel,
Right.
If I book it through Expedia, I walk up to the front desk and I'm like, hey, they're like, you don't get points. You don't get anything. You booked it through Expedia. You deal with Expedia.
Right.
And I sat there and explained that model to them, and every one of them out there in Silicon Valley was like, what? I'm like, yeah, people, like, the driver's going to say, look, your money, like, we're just supplying it. We're not going to give you that membership superior service because I'm paying a cut to the middleman. And when I heard that, I was like, ooh, that is brutal. And the companies, then I asked another one, as I said, how are you going to handle customer damage? Oh, all the insurance has got it. Okay, how do you handle loss and theft? Oh, all the insurance has got it. I'm like, okay, how do you handle customer concerns or repairs or issues, or I don't know how it operates? They're going to call you and you don't have anybody on the other end of the phone. So how do you work all that out? And you could tell they hadn't thought it through that much, but eventually they're gonna. And exactly what you said is, could it go Amazon?
I mean, years back, as you started to get these companies coming out trying to basically create a marketplace, right? And they're still there, and some of them are doing well. And you know, it's like hotels resisted forever being on hotels.com, but they finally figured out they had to be on hotels.com, right? It's just because they got enough business. But what makes it trickier is what you're describing. The hotel room is very controllable, and hotels.com can pretty much count that if they book you into a Marriott, it's going to be good. You know, it's going to be fine. Equipment's different, and
Absolutely.
the hotel room isn't going to break. And if the air conditioner breaks in a hotel room, they can probably just move you next door.
Yeah. Right. You know, something that I've noticed in my own behavior, and so this is a study of one, which isn't necessarily super representative, but I'm a big fan of the sharing economy, as everybody unfortunately knows. And I like Airbnb and stuff like that. But I have found, especially with having traveled more over the last few years and using Marriott and gaining status, like, I don't have an Airbnb credit card that gives me points. I don't have Airbnb status. I don't get any free Airbnb nights. I don't find myself Airbnb-ing that much anymore. You know, as much as I love the concept and I really enjoy being in a place where I can cook my own breakfast and deal with all that stuff, when I take a family vacation, it's in a Marriott because we get access to the club, because I get a free upgrade, because I can use some points. Like,
You know, Verbo's listening to this right now, and they're like, "What?"
So Verbo did just recently start some sort of rewards program. And I looked at it because I was like, that's a great idea. And it's not meaty enough yet. It is not nearly meaty enough. And especially if, now, again, I'm a business traveler. So somebody who travels a lot, maybe I'm not the target market. But I am amazed at how locked in somebody can get me and how they can change my behavior so much by making me feel like a valued client.
Amen.
Yeah, no, I agree.